Amy Brooks stood at attention in the cold metal hallway of Omega-7 training station. Her boots were polished black, and her uniform was pressed neat, but her heart was beating fast. She knew why Commander Vincent Hayes had called her to his IS. Office. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Hayes sat behind his steel desk, looking at a datapad. His face was hard, and his gray eyes were cold. He did not look up when Amy walked in. "Cadet Brooks," he said in a flat voice, "sit down." Amy sat in the metal chair across from his desk. The chair was uncomfortable and made her sit up straight. She waited for him to speak. Hayes finally looked up from his datapad. "Your test scores are average. Your attitude is not." He tapped the pad with his finger. "You think you know better than your teachers. You break rules. You ask too many questions." Amy kept her face blank. This was not news to her. She had grown up on a ranch in Montana where asking questions kept. Animals alive and breaking rules sometimes saved the day. The Space Academy was different. Here, they wanted everyone to think the same way. "I have a special assignment for you," Hayes continued. "A solo mission to the Zeta Prime system. Reconnaissance. Only. You will take photographs of enemy positions and return to report. No contact with hostile forces. No heroics. Just follow orders for once." Amy felt her stomach drop. Solo missions were rare for cadets. Usually they meant one of two things. Either you were the best student in your class, or you were being punished. Amy knew which one this was. "The ship is the Mustang," Hayes said, "a light scout vessel. It has basic shields, a small laser cannon, and stealth systems. Your job is to stay hidden and come back alive. Can you handle that, Cadet Brooks?" "Yes." "Sir?" Amy said. But inside, she was thinking about why he was sending her alone. Into enemy space. Hayes stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. "The Vorthic Empire has been moving through that sector. They are reptiles, cold-blooded killers who have never lost a battle. Our human forces have not impressed our alien allies in the coalition. This mission will show them what humans can do when we follow orders." Amy understood now. This was a test, but not the kind she expected. Hayes wanted her to run away at the first sign of trouble. He wanted her to prove that humans were cowards who could not fight. Then he could tell the coalition leaders that humans were not ready for real combat. "You leave in 2 hours," Hayes said. "Get your gear and report to Docking Bay 7. And Brooks?" He turned to look at her. "Try not to get yourself killed. It would be bad for human relations." Amy saluted and left the office. Her boots made sharp sounds on the metal floor as she walked to her quarters. Inside her small room, she packed her few belongings into a military bag. Photos of her families. Ranch, a lucky coin from her grandfather. A knife her father had given her before she left for the academy. As she packed, her friend Jake Murphy knocked on her door. He was a tall boy from Texas with sandy hair and worried eyes. "I heard about your assignment," Jake said as he came in. "This is not fair, Amy. Everyone knows Hayes does not like humans getting real combat roles." Amy folded her spare uniform and put it in the bag. "Maybe that is why I need to go." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Amy sat on her narrow bed and looked at her friend. "Hayes thinks I will run away when things get dangerous. He thinks all humans will run away. Maybe it is time to show him he is wrong." Jake shook his head. "Amy, this is not about proving something. The Vorthic have never been beaten by anyone. Their ships are bigger and stronger than anything we have. One scout ship against their whole fleet? That is not brave. That is stupid." Amy stood up and shouldered her bag. "My grandfather used to say that sometimes you have to do the stupid thing because it is also the right thing." "Your grandfather never fought space aliens," Jake said. Amy smiled for the first time that day. No, but he fought rattlesnakes and mountain lions in winter storms that could kill a whole herd. He taught me that running away just means you have to fight somewhere else later, usually when you are weaker. Jake followed her out of the room and down the corridor toward the docking bays. So what are you going to do? I am going to follow orders, Amy said. I am going to take pictures and come back to report. But if the Vorthik try to stop me, well, that is their choice. Docking Bay 7 was a huge space filled with ships. The Mustang sat in the center, small and sleek like a silver bird. It was much smaller than the big warships around it, but it looked fast and smart. Chief Petty Officer Linda Grant was waiting by the ship. She was an older woman with graying hair and steady hands. She had worked on ships for 20 years. Your bird is ready to fly, Cadet, Grant said. I loaded extra food and water. Also some spare parts for the engines. You might need them. Amy looked at the older woman carefully. Do you think this mission is what Commander Hayes says it is? Grant was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think young people sometimes see things that old people miss. And I think the universe has a way of putting the right person in the right place at the right time. Amy climbed up the ladder into the Mustang. The cockpit was small, but well designed. Everything was within easy reach. The controls were simple and clear. This was a ship built for one person to handle alone. She ran through the pre-flight checks her instructors had taught her. Engines good, life support good, weapons charged, shields ready, navigation computer loaded with her course to Zeta Prime. As the docking bay doors opened to show the star-filled darkness of space, Amy felt something she had not felt in months at the academy. She felt free. The Mustang lifted off smoothly and turned toward the jump point that would take her to Zeta Prime. As the station grew smaller behind her, Amy thought about what Hayes expected her to do. He wanted her to take a few pictures and run home like a scared rabbit, but Amy Brooks was not scared. She was angry. Angry at being underestimated. Angry at being used as an example of human weakness. And most of all, angry at the idea that humans had to prove themselves by being afraid. The jump drive engaged, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Amy was on her way to enemy space, alone in a small ship, carrying the hopes and fears of her entire species. She did not plan to disappoint them. The Mustang dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Zeta Prime system. Amy's hands moved over the controls, checking all systems. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. Her sensors showed what should have been a quiet system with one yellow star and 6 planets. But the screen was full of red dots. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. This was not the small Vorthik outpost the command had told her to expect. Amy pushed the stealth system button. The Mustang's hull shifted color to match the black. Space around it. She was now nearly invisible to most sensors. She hoped it would be enough. She moved closer to get a better look. What she saw made her blood run cold. The 4th planet was covered with construction. Huge shipyards floated in orbit. New warships were being built every day. This was not just an outpost. This was a staging ground for invasion. Amy began taking pictures with the ship's cameras. She counted ship types and numbers. Battleships longer than city blocks. Carriers full of fighter craft. Supply vessels bringing materials from across the Vorthik Empire. This fleet could destroy every coalition world in the sector. She was so focused on her work that she almost missed the patrol ship. The Vorthik vessel appeared on her sensors suddenly, only a few kilometers away. It was twice the size of the Mustang, dark green with weapon ports along its sides. Amy held her breath and stayed perfectly still, hoping her stealth systems would hide her. For a moment, it seemed to work. The patrol ship drifted past without changing course. Amy began to relax. Then the patrol ship turned around and started moving straight toward her. Amy's mind raced. Her stealth was good, but not perfect. The Vorthik must have better sensors than Command had thought. In seconds, they would be close enough to scan her ship and identify her as human. She had two choices. She could run and probably get caught by faster Vorthik ships. Or she could fight and probably die quickly. Amy made a third choice. Her fingers. Hit the weapons control. The Mustang carried mining charges for emergency asteroid clearing. They were not weapons, but they were explosives. She fired 2 charges at the patrol ship and pushed. Her engines to full power dot. The charges hit the Vorthik ship's hull and exploded. The patrol ship's shields flared bright green and then failed. The second explosion tore through the ship's armor. Atmosphere vented into space in a white cloud. The ship spun out of control and went dark. Amy had killed her first enemy, but she had also announced her presence to every Vorthik ship in the system. Alarms began sounding on her control panel. Her radio filled with angry Vorthik voices speaking, in their harsh, clicking language. More red dots appeared on her sensor screen, all moving toward her position. Amy turned the Mustang toward the asteroid field around the system's 4th planet. If she could reach the rocks, she might have a chance to hide. The ship's engines pushed her forward at maximum speed. Behind her, a much larger ship appeared. A destroyer, 10 times the size of the patrol ship she had killed. Its weapons were already charging, ready to turn her small ship into space dust. The destroyer fired. Bright energy beams flashed past the Mustang, close enough to make Amy's shield spark. She threw the ship into a spinning dive, using every trick her flight instructors had taught her. More shots followed. One beam clipped her rear shield, sending power fluctuations through the ship. Warning lights flashed on her control panel. The Mustang was fast, but it could not outrun a destroyer forever. Amy reached the asteroid field and dove between 2 spinning rocks the size of mountains. The destroyer followed, its large guns trying to target her small ship among the floating stones. Back on Omega 7, Captain Lisa Carter sat in the communication center, waiting for Amy's first report. The young cadet should have reached Zeta prime hours ago, but there had been no messages, no signals, nothing. Any word from the Mustang? Carter asked the communication officer. Nothing, Captain, the officer replied. We lost her signal when she jumped. That is normal for stealth missions, but we should have heard something by now. Carter felt a cold weight in her stomach. She had not liked Hayes' decision to send a cadet on this mission. But orders were orders, and Amy Brooks had volunteered for dangerous assignments before. Keep listening, Carter said, and prepare a message for command. If we do not hear from Cadet Brooks in 12 hours, we may need to assume the worst. In the asteroid field, Amy was learning hard lessons about space combat. The destroyer was too big to follow her between the smaller rocks, but it could blast the asteroids apart to clear a path. Each explosion sent chunks of stone flying like bullets. The Mustang shook as a piece of rock hit its hull. Amy checked her damage display. Hull breach in cargo bay 2. Sealed automatically, but her air supply was now limited. The destroyer's captain was getting angry. Amy could hear him shouting orders over the radio. His name was Thekvar, and he had been hunting coalition ships for 10 years. He had never lost a target. Amy used the asteroids like her grandfather had used trees when hunting. She would appear from behind one rock, fire her remaining mining charges, then disappear behind another rock before the destroyer could shoot back. It was working, but barely. The destroyer's shields were too strong for her small weapons to really damage, and she was running out of places to hide. Then Amy noticed something. The destroyer was moving in a pattern. It went around asteroids the same way each time. It never took risks or tried surprising moves. The Vorthik fought like they had rule books that told them exactly what to do. Amy's grandfather had taught her that predictable enemies were vulnerable enemies. She let the destroyer chase her deeper into the asteroid field, toward a cluster of rocks near the planet. When Vecvar's ship moved around a large asteroid exactly as she expected, Amy was waiting. She had jury-rigged her remaining mining charges into a single large explosive. When the destroyer appeared, she fired it not at the ship, but at the asteroid above it. The explosion cracked the mountain-sized rock. Millions of tons of stone fell toward the destroyer, like a slow avalanche. Vecvar tried to back his ship away, but destroyers were not built for quick moves. The rocks crashed into the destroyer's upper hull. Its shields overloaded and failed. Armor plates buckled under the weight. The ship's main engines went offline. Amy watched the destroyer drift helplessly among the asteroids. She had won this fight, but she knew it was just the beginning. Her radio crackled with more Vorthik voices. They were sending more ships, bigger ships, and they were very angry. Amy checked her fuel and weapons. Both were running low. She was one human in a small ship, surrounded by an entire enemy fleet. Any sane person would try to escape now and report what they had found, but Amy Brooks had never been accused of being sane. She turned the Mustang toward the center of the Vorthik fleet and began planning her next move. If Command thought she was dead anyway, she might as well make her death count for something. The one-woman war was just beginning. Amy spent 3 days learning how the Vorthik thought. She watched their patrols from hiding spots between asteroids. She listened to their radio communications. She studied how they moved and how they reacted to problems. The Vorthik were good soldiers, but they were not creative. They followed the same patrol routes every day. They used the same formations for every situation. When something unexpected happened, they always responded the same way. Amy's grandfather would have called them barn-sour horses, animals, so used to routine that they could not handle surprises. She used this knowledge to set her first real trap. The Vorthik sent supply ships through the asteroid field every morning at the same time. The ships carried food, fuel, and equipment to the construction sites around the planet. They were big, slow, and protected by only 2 escort fighters. Amy positioned herself along their route, inside a hollow asteroid she had found. When the supply convoy approached, she fired her ship's emergency beacon toward the escorts. The beacon looked like a distress signal from a coalition ship. The escort fighters immediately broke formation to investigate, just like their training told them to do. While they were chasing the false signal, Amy attacked the supply ship from behind. Her makeshift explosives, built from ship, repair tools, and fuel cells, tore through the supply ship's engines. The big vessel lost power and began drifting toward the planet's gravity well. The escort fighters rushed back, but Amy was already gone, hidden among the spinning rocks. This attack disrupted the Vorthik construction schedule. Without the supplies, work on 3 new battleships had to stop. Admiral Zeth Cole, the fleet commander, was not pleased. Amy struck again the next day, and the day after that. Each attack was different. She used the asteroid field like a hunter's forest, appearing and disappearing before the enemy could respond. She learned to make weapons from anything. Ship parts became bombs. Communication equipment became jammers that confused Vorthik sensors. Even the Mustang's food processor could be turned into a device that created false heat signatures. On the 4th day, Amy hit a convoy carrying rare metals needed for ship armor. She had rigged a trap using the gravity of 3 asteroids to slingshot debris at high speed. The metal fragments punched through the convoy's shields like bullets through paper. Commander Vecvar, still trapped in his damaged destroyer, watched these attacks with growing amazement. He had spent his career fighting coalition forces. Most alien species fought in predictable ways. They used standard tactics and followed military doctrine. But this human was different. She fought like a wild animal, intelligent but unpredictable. Every attack was unique. Every trap was creative. She was not following any rule book that Vekvar knew. Admiral Vekvar called Zeth Kol on the communication system. This human is causing serious problems. Our construction is behind schedule. The workers are afraid to leave their ships. Zeth Kol's voice came back cold and angry. It is one small ship, Commander. One frightened cadet running around in the O. Rox, are you telling me that the Vorthic Empire cannot handle one human child? Vekvar looked at the damage reports from the latest attacks. 12 ships destroyed or damaged. Construction delays on 16 new vessels. Supply lines disrupted across the entire system. Admiral, this is not a normal enemy. She fights without honor, without rules. She uses tricks and deception. Our warriors do not know how to respond to such tactics. Then teach them, Zeth Kol said. Send more ships. Use whatever force you need. But I want that human dead before she causes more delays. Amy did not know about this conversation, but she could see the results. More patrol ships appeared in the asteroid field. Bigger ships with stronger weapons. The Vorthic were taking her. Seriously, no. Good, she thought. That meant her plan was working. Amy had realized something important during our days of watching and fighting. The Vorthic were building this fleet to attack coalition worlds. If they finished construction and launched their invasion, millions of innocent people would die. She could not stop the entire fleet by herself. But she might be able to delay it long enough for the coalition to prepare defenses. Every day, she kept the Vorthic busy. In this system was another day for evacuation ships to move civilians to safety. Another day for coalition fleets to gather and prepare for battle. Amy began targeting more important objectives. She attacked the shipyards directly, using the asteroid field's gravity to hurl massive rocks at the construction sites. The rocks moved too slowly for the Vorthic to shoot them all down. One attack destroyed a nearly completed battleship. Another damaged the main construction platform so badly that work had to stop for repairs. The Vorthic response was swift and angry. General Sector arrived with a full battle group, 6 heavy cruisers and 20 escort ships. Their mission was simple: find the human and destroy her. Sector was different from the other Vorthic commanders. He was older, smarter, and more flexible in his thinking. He had fought many different alien species and learned to adapt his tactics. This human fights like the Void Hunters of the Crex Nebula, he told his officers. She uses the environment as a weapon. She strikes from unexpected directions. We must change our approach. Instead of chasing Amy through the asteroids, Sector began systematic sweeps. His ships moved in coordinated patterns, using sensors to map every hiding place in the field. They sealed off escape routes and slowly closed the net around there. Target. Amy felt the change immediately. The Vorthic were no longer making the same predictable moves. They were thinking ahead, setting traps of their own. For the first time since arriving in the system, Amy felt real fear. She was running low on supplies and fuel. Her ship had damage from a dozen small battles. And now she faced an enemy commander, who might be as smart as she was. But fear could be useful, her grandfather had taught her. Fear kept you alive if you used it right. Amy studied Sector's tactics and realized he was trying to drive her toward the planet. The asteroid field was thicker there, with fewer places to hide. If she got trapped near the planet's gravity well, she would have no way to escape, unless that was exactly what she wanted. Amy began moving toward the planet, letting the Vorthic ships push her in that direction. But she was not retreating. She was positioning herself for the biggest, most dangerous gamble of her life, Near the planet's surface was the main supply depot for the entire fleet. It was heavily defended, considered impossible to attack. But it also contained enough fuel to power a small star. If she could reach that depot, Amy might be able to turn the Vorthic fleet's own weapons against them. The problem was getting there alive. Between her and the depot were 30 enemy ships, all looking for her. Amy checked her remaining fuel and ammunition. She had enough for maybe one more fight. After that, she would be defenseless. She thought about her family back on the ranch, about Jake and the other cadets at the academy, about all the coalition civilians who were counting on someone to stop this invasion fleet. Then Amy. Brooks smiled and pushed her engines to full power. It was time to show the galaxy what one determined human could do when she refused to surrender. General Sector stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing respect for his enemy. The human had evaded his forces for 6 days now, striking at targets across the system with impossible precision. She is not running randomly, he told his tactical officer. Look at her attack pattern. She hits supply convoys here, construction sites there, but always moves toward the planet. She has a plan. The tactical officer, a young Vorthic named Retkol, studied the display. What could one small ship hope to accomplish near the planet, General? Our defenses there are strongest. Sector's eyes narrowed. In his long military career, he had learned to think like his enemies. What would he do if he were a desperate human in a damaged ship, facing impossible odds? The supply depot, he said suddenly. She means to attack the main supply depot. Retkol looked shocked. Impossible, General. The depot is protected by shield generators and weapon platforms. Even a full coalition battle group could not break through those defenses. A coalition battle group would attack from outside, Sector replied, but this human does not think like other coalition forces. She would find another way. Amy was indeed thinking of another way. Hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid, she studied the tactical data she had gathered over the past week. The supply depot was a fortress, protected by overlapping shields and automated defense guns. A direct attack would be suicide, but Amy had noticed something the Vorthic designers had missed. The depot's shields were designed to stop attacks from outside. They were weakest on the underside, where they faced the planet. The Vorthic had assumed no enemy could attack from that direction without being detected by the planet's sensor network. They had not counted on someone crazy enough to dive through the planet's atmosphere. Amy began her approach, using the planet's magnetic field to mask her ship's energy signature. The Mustang dropped toward the planet's surface, heating up as it hit the upper atmosphere. Warning lights flashed as the hull temperature rose beyond safe limits. The planet was a barren world of rock and ice, with storms that could tear apart an unprotected ship. Amy guided the Mustang through the storm clouds, using the electrical interference to hide from enemy sensors. Behind her, Sector's ships spread out across the asteroid field, hunting for their target. When they could not find her among the rocks, the general realized what she was doing. She has gone to the planet, he announced. All ships move to intercept. Do not let her reach the supply depot. But Amy was already climbing back up through the atmosphere on the planet's far side, directly below the depot. Her ship's hull was glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction, and several systems had overloaded from the heat. But she was alive, and she was exactly where she needed to be. The supply depot hung in orbit above her like a metal moon. Its underside shields flickered weakly, designed only to stop debris and small meteors. Amy armed her last remaining mining charges and prepared for the attack that would either save the coalition or end her life. At that moment, her radio crackled with an incoming transmission. The voice was speaking in perfect English, with the cold reptilian accent of a Vorthic. Human pilot, This is General Sector of the Vorthic Imperial Fleet. I know who you are and what you plan to do. Your courage is impressive, but your mission will fail. Surrender now, and I will guarantee your safe treatment as a prisoner of war." Amy looked at the massive supply depot above her. Inside were enough fusion materials to fuel the invasion fleet for months. If she could detonate them, the explosion would cripple the Vorthic war effort in this sector. She keyed her radio. "General. Sector, this is Cadet Amy Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet. I appreciate the offer, but I have a job to finish." "You are one person in a damaged ship," Sector replied. "Even if you succeed in damaging the depot, you will not survive the explosion." "Is your life worth so little?" Amy thought about her family, her friends, and all the innocent people who would die if this fleet launched its attack. "My life is worth exactly what I choose to make it worth, General. And right now, it is worth stopping your invasion." She cut the transmission and fired her engines, accelerating toward the depot at maximum speed. Sector watched her approach on his tactical display. His ships were still minutes away from intercept range. The depot's defensive guns were trying to target the small, fast-moving ship, but their systems were not designed for threats from below. "All ships, maximum speed," he ordered. "We must stop her before she reaches the depot." Amy's ship shook as defensive lasers fired around her. One beam clipped her starboard engine, sending sparks through the cockpit. She fought to keep control. As the Mustang spun toward the depot's hull, the mining charges were armed and ready. In 30 seconds, she would be close enough to fire them into the depot's fusion storage tanks. The explosion would destroy the depot, cripple the invasion fleet, and probably vaporize her ship. But as Amy prepared to fire, she noticed something on her sensors that changed everything. The depot was not just a supply station. It was also command center, coordinating the movements of the entire Vorthic fleet. Destroying it would not just eliminate their fuel supplies. It would blind their command structure and leave hundreds of ships unable to coordinate their actions. Amy realized she might not need to die to win this battle. If she could capture the depot instead of destroying it, she could turn the Vorthic fleet against itself. It was an insane plan. She was one person against a space station with a crew of thousands. But Amy had learned that sometimes the most insane plans were the only ones that worked. She changed course at the last second, heading for the depot's docking bay instead of its fuel tanks. The defensive guns tracked her movement, firing desperately as the small ship dove toward the station. Amy's ship crashed through the docking bay's atmospheric shield and skidded across the metal floor, leaving a trail of sparks and wreckage. The Mustang came to rest against a fuel tank, steam rising from its overheated hull. Emergency alarms blared throughout the depot. Vorthic security teams rushed toward the docking bay, their weapons ready. Amy climbed out of her damaged ship, her father's knife in one hand and an improvised explosive device in the other. She had maybe 10 minutes before Sector's ships arrived. 10 minutes to either capture a space station or die trying. The first Vorthic soldier to enter the docking bay found Amy waiting behind a stack of supply crates. She threw her explosive device at the ceiling above the soldiers. When it exploded, falling debris blocked the entrance and trapped the security team inside. Amy ran deeper into the station, following the signs toward the command center. Behind her, she could hear the Vorthic trying to clear the blocked passage. She had no plan beyond reaching the command center. No idea how to operate Vorthic technology or control their fleet. But she had learned something important during her week of fighting. Sometimes you did not need a plan. Sometimes you just needed to be too stubborn to quit. The command center was 3 levels up and heavily guarded. Between Amy and her target were hundreds of enemy soldiers, automated defenses, and security systems designed to stop any intruder. Amy Brooks smiled and started climbing. The real battle was just beginning. Amy fought her way through the depot level by level. She used maintenance shafts to avoid patrols and emergency equipment to make weapons. A fire suppression system became a smokescreen. Magnetic clamps from the docking bay became improvised. Grenades. The Vorthik soldiers were trained for boarding actions and space combat, but they had never faced an enemy who used the station itself as a weapon. Amy turned their own systems against them, sealing blast doors to trap squads and overloading power conduits to create barriers of electrical energy. On the command level, she found herself face to face with Station Commander Vic Thal, a massive Vorthik with scarred armor and cold yellow eyes. He was twice her size and armed with an energy weapon that could cut through steel. "Surrender, human," he hissed in accented English. "You have fought well, but this ends now." Amy looked around the command center. Banks of computers controlled every aspect of the depot's operations. Through the main screen, she could see General Sector's fleet approaching fast. "You are right," Amy said. "This does end now." She pressed the activation button on her last explosive device and threw it. Not at the Vorthik commander, but at the main computer bank. The explosion destroyed half the control systems and sent sparks flying across the room. Vic Thal roared in anger and fired his weapon, but Amy was already moving. She dove behind a control console as energy beams burned the air where she had been standing. The explosion had damaged the station's artificial gravity. Amy used this to her advantage, pushing off walls and floating across the room faster than the heavy Vorthik could follow. She reached the manual control station and began entering commands. Amy could not read Vorthik writing, but she understood numbers and symbols. She found the controls for the station's main communication array and began broadcasting on all frequencies. Her message was simple. "This is Cadet Amy Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have captured your supply depot and command center. Any ship that continues hostile actions will face the consequences." The response was immediate. Hundreds of Vorthik voices filled the radio, all speaking at once in their harsh language. But Amy also heard something else. Confusion. The fleet's command structure was breaking down without the depot's coordination. General Sector's voice cut through the chaos. "Human, you cannot operate our systems. You do not understand our technology. Release the station, and I will allow you to leave safely." Amy found the controls for the depot's massive fusion reactor. Her grandfather had taught her that when dealing with dangerous animals, sometimes you had to convince them you were even more dangerous. "General, I may not understand your technology, but I understand explosives. This depot contains enough fusion fuel to destroy half your fleet. One wrong. Move from your ships, and I start an overload sequence that will turn this station into a small sun." It was a bluff. Amy had no idea how to overload a fusion reactor safely. If she tried it, she would probably just kill herself and leave the depot intact. But Sector did not know that. The Vorthik general was silent for a long moment. Amy could see his ships on the station's sensors, close enough to dock, but not attacking. Her bluff was working. "What do you want, human?" Sector finally asked. Amy looked at the tactical display showing the entire Vorthik fleet. Thousands of ships, all built for one purpose, conquest. All stopped by one determined human who refused to give up. "I want you to leave," she said. "Take your fleet and go back where you came from. This sector is under coalition protection now." Commander Vic Thal, still trapped on the other side of the command center, laughed harshly. "You are insane, human. One person cannot defeat an entire fleet." Amy smiled and began entering new commands into the station's computers. "Maybe not, but one person can make it very expensive for you to stay." She activated the depot's emergency beacon, broadcasting her location and situation to every coalition ship within 50 light years. Then she accessed the station's database and began uploading tactical information about the Vorthik fleet to the coalition networks: ship numbers, weapon specifications, patrol routes, supply schedules, everything the coalition would need to plan effective defenses against the Vorthik invasion. General Sector watched his tactical advantage disappear with each piece of data the human transmitted. His fleet's movements, their weaknesses, their battle plans, all of it was now in enemy hands. "Stop the transmission," he ordered his communications officer. "I cannot, General. She has control of the depot's main array. To stop her, we would have to destroy the station." Sector looked at the supply depot on his screen. Destroying it would eliminate the human threat, but it would also cripple his fleet's ability to launch the invasion. Without the depot's fuel and supplies, his ships would have to return to Vorthik space for resupply. The invasion would be delayed for months, maybe years. Amy continued her work, copying every file she could access. She found something that made her heart race: the complete invasion plan. Target worlds, attack routes, timing, everything. If this information reached Coalition Command, they could evacuate civilian populations and position their fleets for maximum effectiveness. "Human," Sector's voice came over the radio again. "You have made your point, but you cannot hold that station forever. Eventually, you will run out of air, food, or ammunition. When that happens, we will take it back." Amy looked around the command center. Vekthal was still trapped behind debris from her earlier explosion, but more Vorthik soldiers would be cutting through the sealed doors soon. Her makeshift weapons were almost exhausted, and she had been awake for nearly 24 hours straight, but she was not finished yet. Amy accessed the depot's manufacturing systems and began a new program. The station's automated factories started producing emergency beacon pods, small devices designed to transmit distress signals. But Amy programmed them to broadcast the Vorthik tactical data instead. She launched 100 beacon pods toward the system's edge, each one carrying copies of the invasion plans. Even if the Vorthik recaptured the depot, the information would still reach Coalition space. "General Sector," Amy transmitted, "I have just launched your complete battle plans to every Coalition world in the sector. Your invasion is no longer a secret. Every civilian ship is evacuating. Every defense fleet is repositioning. You have lost the advantage of surprise." The silence that followed was longer this time. Amy could almost hear Sector calculating the costs of continuing his mission. An invasion without surprise would be far more expensive in ships and lives. Then a new voice joined the conversation. It was Admiral Kate Rivers of the Coalition Defense Force, transmitting from the edge of the system. "This is Admiral Rivers with Coalition Fleet Group 7. Cadet Brooks, we received your transmission and are moving to assist. General Sector, you are ordered to withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." Amy felt relief flood through her. Help was coming. She had held out long enough. On his flagship, General Sector studied the tactical display. Admiral Rivers had brought 20 Coalition ships, including several heavy cruisers. Not enough to defeat his entire fleet, but enough to make victory very costly. And with the element of surprise gone, the invasion was doomed to failure anyway. More importantly, Sector realized something that changed his entire perspective on the war. This human cadet had done something no military strategist thought possible. She had defeated a superior force through pure determination and creative thinking. If one human could cause this much damage, what could humanity accomplish when they fully joined the galactic community? "All ships," Sector transmitted to his fleet, "prepare for withdrawal. we are returning to Vorthic space. Commander Vekthal finally broke through the debris, blocking his path. General, we cannot retreat. One human has made fools of our entire fleet. Exactly, Sektor replied. And if we stay, she will make corpses of us as well. This battle is over. Amy watched the Vorthic ships begin their withdrawal on the depot's sensors. Hundreds of vessels that had threatened multiple worlds were turning away. Defeated by one cadet who had refused to surrender, Admiral Rivers' fleet arrived 3 hours later to find Amy sitting in the depot's command center, still wearing her torn flight suit and eating Vorthic military rations she had found in storage. Cadet Brooks, Admiral Rivers said as she entered the command center, I think we need to have a long conversation about your definition of reconnaissance. Only. Amy stood up and saluted, swaying slightly from exhaustion. Admiral, I followed my orders. I observed enemy positions and reported back. I just reported back in a slightly unconventional way. Admiral Rivers looked around the captured command center, then at the tactical displays showing the retreating Vorthic fleet. Cadet, what you did here will be studied in military academies for the next 100 years. You single-handedly prevented an invasion that could have cost millions of lives. Amy thought about Commander Hayes back at Omega 7, who had expected her to run away at the first sign of trouble. Admiral, I think humans are ready for more than just support roles in the Coalition fleet. Admiral Rivers smiled. I think you are absolutely right. How would you like to command your own ship, Lieutenant Brooks? Amy looked out at the stars, where Coalition and former enemy ships were beginning to work together to secure the system. She thought about Jake and the Oath,